我们的家就是这样一个临时搭建的复兴悲剧之一的结果。越后省是信奉双重政府的其中之一，对我们的人民来说，日本天皇太过神圣，不可能与战争，甚至不可能与恼人的民事事务发生联系，所以他们为了维护幕府将军的权利而战斗。他们的祖先世世代代都效忠于幕府将军的权利。那时，我的父亲是长冈县长的第一顾问，他从7岁起就担任这个职务。因为我的祖父突然去世，这个职位一直空缺着。由于某些特殊的情况，我父亲是唯一掌权的执行者，因此在复辟王朝的战争中，他肩负着族长的责任和职责。在长冈有生以来最痛苦的时刻，越后发现自己站在了战败的一方。当我的母亲得知她的丈夫事业失败了，她被俘虏了，她把她的家人送到一个安全的地方，然后为了防止府邸落入敌人的手中，她亲手放了一把火，从山上看着它被烧成平地。
That our home was such a makeshift was the result of one of the tragedies of the Restoration. Ichigo Province was one of those that had believed in the dual government. To our people, the Mikado was too sacred to be in touch with war, or even annoying civil matters. And so they fought to uphold the shogun power to which for generations their ancestors had been loyal. At which time my father was a Karo, or first counselor of the daimyo of Nagaoka, a position which he had held since the age of 7, when the sudden death of my grandfather had left it vacant. Because of certain unusual circumstances, my father was the only executive in power, and thus it was that during the wars of the Restoration, he had the responsibility and the duties of the office of daimyo. At the bitterest moment that Nagaoka ever knew, Ichigo found herself on the defeated side. When my mother learned that her husband's cause was lost and he taken prisoner, she sent her household to a place of safety, and then, to prevent the mansion from falling into the hands of the enemy, she with her own hands set fire to it, and from the mountainside washed it and burned to the ground.
战争的狂风暴雨过后，父亲终于摆脱了他被要求在中央政府稳定之前继续担任的州长职务。他收集了他的家族遗产，与他现在的仆从们分享后，在他以前的官邸的旧址上建造了这个临时的家。然后他在附近的几英亩土地上种了一片桑树林，并为自己跻身农民阶级而感到自豪。武士阶层的人对商业一无所知，他们一直认为处理金钱是一种耻辱，因此所有商业事务的管理都留给了忠诚但完全没有经验的吉亚。而父亲把他的一生致力于阅读、回忆，以及向他不那么先进的邻居介绍不受欢迎的渐进式改革思想。
After the stormy days of war were past, and father was finally free from the governorship, which he had been directed to retain until the central government became stabilized, he gathered together the remains of his family estate, and after sharing with his now fish-on-land retainers. He built this temporary home on the site of his former mansion. Then he planted a mulberry grove on a few acres of land nearby, and prided himself on having leveled his rank to the class of farmer. Men of samurai knew nothing about business. It had always been considered a disgrace for them to handle money, so the management of all business affairs was left to faithful but wholly inexperienced Jiya. While father devoted his life to reading, to memories, and to introducing unwelcome ideas of progressive reform to his less advanced neighbors.
然而，我的父亲坚持一种奢侈的生活方式。在复辟以前，法律规定像他这样地位的人每2年去一次都城，但现在改为每年一次的非正式旅行。他笑称这种旅行为通向成长的窗口，这个名词再合适不过了，因为我父亲每年一次的访问让他给全家带来了日本进步的远景。除了精美的文字图片，他还给我们带来了一些奇怪的不为人知的礼物，给仆人的小饰品，给孩子们的玩具，给母亲的有用的家居用品，以及给备受尊重的祖母的稀有进口物品。
My father, however, held on to one extravagance, the former once-in-2 years journey to the capital, which, before the Restoration, the law required of men of his position was now changed to an informal annual trip, of which he laughingly called the window toward growing days. The name was most appropriate, for this yearly visit of my father gave his whole family a distant view of progressing Japan. Besides the wonderful word pictures, he also brought us gifts of strange and known things, trinkets for the servants, toys for the children, useful house articles for mother, and often rare imported things for the much-honored grandmother.
吉亚总是陪着父亲去这些地方。他作为业务经理，经常接触商人，听过许多外国人与日本人打交道的故事。所有人都承认外国商业系统的巧妙之处，尽管对日本人来说这常常是灾难性的，但它却激起了人们的钦佩和模仿的欲望。世上没有比吉亚更诚实的人了，但由于他为了忠于他深爱的主人的利益，他曾经让我们的家族的名誉陷入混乱，这需要数月的时间和大量的金钱来解决。事实上，我怀疑是否有任何一方清楚地了解了这件事。我知道只要吉亚还活着，这对他来说就是个痛苦的难题。他以这种方式发生了。
Jiya always accompanied father on these trips, and in his position as business manager, came in contact with tradesmen and heard many tales of the methods of foreigners in dealing with Japanese. The cleverness of the foreign business system was acknowledged by everyone, and although frequently disastrous to the Japanese, it aroused admiration and a desire to imitate. a more honest soul than Gia never lived, but in his desire to be loyal to the interests of his much-loved master, he once got our family name into a tangle of disgrace that took months of time and much money to straighten out. Indeed, I doubt if the matter was ever clearly understood by any of the parties. I know it was a sore puzzle to Gia as long as he lived. It happened in this way.
吉亚认识了一个日本人，他是一个外国人的代理人，从周围所有的村庄购买蚕卵卡。这种卡片是用一种特殊的墨水，在上面画上所有者的名字或徽章，然后把卡片放在飞蛾下面，飞蛾在上面产出种子似的成千上万的小卵。这些卡片最终被分类并出售给经销商。这个经纪人是一个非常富有的人，他告诉吉亚，如果用芥菜籽代替蚕卵，这些卡就会卖得很好，这将使它的主人变得富有。他解释说，这是现在横滨商人所采用的一种外国商业方法，它被称为是日本强大的新方法，使高鼻子的野蛮人在贸易中再也不能打败日本的孩子。
Gia became acquainted with a Japanese man who, as agent for a foreigner, was buying up cards of silkworm eggs from all the villages around. Such cards were prepared by having painted on them, with a special ink, the name or crest of the owner. Then the cards were placed beneath the butterflies, which laid on them their small, seed-like eggs by the thousands. The cards were finally classified and sold to dealers. This agent, who was very wealthy man, told Gia that if mustard seeds were substituted for the eggs, the cards would sell at a profit that would make his master rich. This, the agent explained, was a foreign business method being adopted now by the merchants of Yokohama. It was known as the new way of making Japan strong, so the high-nosed barbarian could no longer beat the children of Japan in trade.
由于我父亲的桑园为附近村庄的许多蚕提供了食物，他的名字对代理人来说是一个很好的名字，而可怜的吉亚对以这种巧妙的新方式做生意感到高兴，认为这当然是一个愿意使用的工具。那人准备了价值数百日元的贺卡，上面都印有我父亲的徽章。也许他把所有的钱都装进了自己的口袋。不管怎么说，我们第一次知道这件事是在一个高大脸红的外国男人穿着奇怪的烟斗似的衣服来见我父亲的时候。我多么清楚地记得那重要的一天啊！妹妹和我用湿润的指尖在纸门上融化出一个小小的洞，窥视这个奇妙的陌生人。我们知道这很粗鲁，很低级，但这是千载难逢的机会。
As my father's mulberry grove furnished food for many of the silkworms in nearby villages, his name was a good one for the agent to use, and poor Gia, delighted to be doing business in the clever new way, was of course a willing tool. The men prepared the cards to the value of hundreds of yen, all marked with my father's crest. Probably he pocketed all the money. Anyway, the first we knew of the affair was when a very tall, red-faced foreign man in strange, pipe-like garments called to see my father. How well I remember that important day. Sister and I, with moistened fingertips, melted tiny holes in the paper doors to peep at the wonderful stranger. We knew it was rude and low class, but it was the opportunity of a lifetime.
我没有理由认为那个外国男人应该受到任何指责，很可能，这个经纪人也认为他只是在和那个外国人比聪明而已。在那些奇怪的日子里，很多事情都被误解了。当然，对这桩生意一无所知的父亲付出了代价，保住了自己的名声。但我怀疑他是否明白这一切意味着什么。这是当时头脑简单的诸侯们所做的许多可悲的尝试之一。他们忠诚而腐笨的心中充满的是爱，而不是智慧。在漫长的冬夜里，我很喜欢溜到仆人的大厅里去看佣人干活，听他们讲故事。那时我大约7岁。有一天晚上，我正匆忙地沿着通向那间屋子的弯弯曲曲的门廊走着，突然我听到有声音夹杂着从屋顶上扔下的软雪的砰砰声。天黑后，屋顶上很少有人打扫，但吉亚却在那里和苦力头争吵，坚持要在晚上把活儿干完。
I have no reason to think that foreign man was in any way to blame, and possibly, the agent also thought that he was only competing in cleverness with the foreigner. So many things were misunderstood in those strange days. Of course, my father, who had known absolutely nothing of the transaction, paid the price and made good his name, but I doubt if he ever understood what it all meant. This was one of the many pathetic attempts made in those days by simple-minded vassals, whose loyal, blundering hearts were filled with more love than wisdom. In the lone winter evenings, I was very fond of slipping away to the servants' hall to watch the work going on there and to hear stories. One evening, when I was about 7 years old, I was hurrying along the zigzag porch leading to that part of the house when I heard voices mingling with the thuds of soft snow being thrown from the roof. It was unusual to have the roof cleared after dark, but Gia was up there arguing with the head coolie and insisting that the work must be done that night.
听见他说，天亮之前就会把屋顶压碎的。一个苦力嘟囔着说道，寺庙礼拜的时间到了。我注意到寺庙的钟声沉闷地响着，然而吉亚有他的办法。男人们继续工作，我对那个胆敢质疑吉亚命令的苦力的胆量感到吃惊。在我幼稚的头脑里，吉亚是一个了不起的人，他总是对的，他的话就是规则。但是尽管我十分尊重他的智慧，我还是全心全意地爱着他。这是有道理的，因为当我坐在花园里的石头上看着他工作时，他从来没有忙到不给我编一个稻草娃娃， 或者是给我讲故事。
At the rate the snow is falling, I heard him say, it'll crush the roof before morning. One of the coolies muttered something about its being time for temple service, and I noticed the dull tolling of the temple bell. However, Gia had his way, and the men went on with the work. I was astonished at the daring of the coolie, who had ventured to question Gia's command. To my childish mind, Gia was a remarkable person who was always right and whose word was law. But with all my respect for his wisdom, I loved him with all my heart, and with reason, for he was never too busy to twist up a straw doll for me, or to tell me a story as I sat on a garden stone watching him work.
仆人的大厅是一个非常大的房间，一半的地板上散布着草席，这是纺纱、磨米和厨房里各种工作的地方。另一半是用来做硬粘土之类的粗活和不整洁的活的地方。房间的中央是壁炉，一个埋在地板上的粘土内衬的大盒子，旁边放着一篮子柴火，高高的横梁上挂着一条铁链，上面摆着各种做饭用的器具。烟从屋顶中央的一个开口里冒出来，这个开口上面有一个额外的小屋顶，用来挡雨。当我走进大房间时，空气中充满了工作的嗡嗡声，夹杂着说话和笑声。屋角里有一个姑娘正在磨米，明天要做饺子；另一个正在用一件旧和服做棉衣；另外2个人正在把黑豆从白豆中抖出来，从一个人手里扔到另一个人的手里。离他们稍远一点的地方坐着医师，他正在用一根小棍旋转着纺车。
The servants' hall was a very large room. One half of the board floor had straw mats scattered here and there. This was the part where the spinning, rice grinding, and the various occupations of the kitchen went on. The other half, where rough or untidy work was done, was of hard clay. In the middle of the room was the fireplace, a big, cling-lined box sunk in the floor, with a basket of firewood beside it. From a beam high above hung a chain from which swung various implements used in cooking. The smoke passed out through an opening in the center of the roof, above which was a small extra to keep out the rain. As I entered the big room, the air was filled with the buzz of work, mingled with chatter and laughter. In one corner was a maid grinding rice for tomorrow's dumplings. Another was making padded scrub cloth out of an old kimono. 2 others were tossing from one to the other the shallow basket that shook the dark beans from the white. And a little apart from the others sat Ishi, rolling her spinning wheel with a little tapping stick.
这里传来一阵欢迎我的沙沙声，因为仆人们都很喜欢月宝萨玛，也就是我的来访。一个急忙给我拿来一个靠垫， 另一个扔了一把干栗子皮在炙热的炉火上。我喜欢栗子壳余烬不断变化的颜色，停下来看了一会儿。过来，月宝少爷，一个温柔的声音喊道。
There was a rustle of welcome for me, for the servants all liked a visit from Itsubo-sama, as they called me. One hurried to bring me a cushion, and another tossed a handful of dried chestnut hulls on the glowing fire. I loved the changing tints of chestnut hull embers, and stopped a moment to watch them. Come here, called a soft voice.
这是医师，他走到垫子上，把他的垫子留给了我。他知道我喜欢转动纺车，所以他把棉球塞到我手里，自己也稳稳地卧在上面。当我旋转大转盘时，我仍然能感觉到那条线从我指尖划过的柔软。我担心我纺的线很不均匀，不过也许对他来说是幸运的，因为我的注意力很快就被吉亚的进入吸引了过去。他把一张席子拉到屋子的泥墙边，过了一会儿坐了下来，伸出一只脚，用脚趾夹住用稻草捻成的绳子的一端。吉亚先生，医师说，我们有贵客了。
It was Ishi. She had moved over onto the mat, leaving her cushion for me. She knew I loved to turn the spinning wheel, so she pushed the cotton ball into my hand, holding her own safely over it. I can yet feel the soft pull of that thread slipping through my fingers as I whirled the big wheel. I'm afraid that I spun a very uneven thread, and it was probably fortunate for her work that my attention was soon attracted by Gia's entrance. He pulled the mat over to the clay side of the room, and in a moment was seated with his foot stretched out, holding between his toes one end of the rope he was twisting out of rye straw. Gia-san, called Ishi, we have an honored guest.
吉亚迅速抬起头来，在他伸展的绳子上方打着一个滑稽的蝴蝶结。他微笑着举起了一双挂在绳子上的草鞋。啊！我喊道，飞快地跳起来，穿过泥地跑向他。这是我的雪鞋吗？你做好了吗？是的，月宝萨玛，他回答说，把一双小草鞋塞到我手里。我刚刚做好，这将是今年雪下的最深的一次。明天你去上学的时候，你可以抄近路，直接穿过小溪和田野，因为到时候哪儿也没有路。和往常一样，吉亚的预言是对的。如果没有雪靴，我们这些女孩子根本不可能去上学。此外，她对苦力的坚持拯救了我们的屋顶，因为在早晨之前，又有5英尺厚的雪填满了那些深凹的小径，堆积在街道长长的白色山顶上。
Rope. He smilingly held up a pair of straw shoes dangling from a cord. Ah, I cried, jumping up quickly and running across the clay floor to him. Are they my snowshoes? Have you finished them? Yes, he answered, putting in my hands a pair of small straw boots, and I have finished them just in time. This is going to be the deepest snow we have had this year. When you go to school tomorrow, you can take a shortcut straight over the brooks and fields, for there will be no roads anywhere. As usual, Gia's prediction was right. Without our snow boots, we girls could not have gone to school at all. Moreover, his persistence with the coolies has saved our roof. For before morning, 5 feet more of snow filled with the deep-cut path and piled on top of the long white mountain in the street